Hello everyone, this is Pastor Tina here today to do some art with you again. I'm really excited to show you another project. Today we're going to do wave line art, and we have two examples of our wave line art right here. So I'm really excited to be able to do this with you today. Before we get started, I want to let you know some of the things that we're going to need. Hopefully you have them, but let's double check to make sure we're ready to get started. First, you need a canvas that is 5 by 7 inches. You should have a printout of a wave shape. This will help you get a really nice wave shape when we do our artwork. You're also going to need a piece of cardboard. Now, I did some recycling. This is an old pizza box. You could use a cereal box or any other kind of cardboard you have lying around. You're also going to need a pair of scissors to do some cutting. We're going to need some markers. Now, these markers come from the dollar store, but there's two sides to them. If you only have a marker with one side, that's okay, but this has a thin end, but this is actually thicker than the other end, and a thinner one. And I have two just in case one of mine stops working on me. You'll need some paintbrushes today, some water to make sure your paintbrushes stay clean and don't get hard. And we only need two colors of paint today, so we're going to use a light blue and a white. It's always good to have paper towel on hand because you never know if a small mess might happen, and just to clean up your brushes along the way. We also have a hair dryer. Just because we're going to try to do this whole project during this video, we're going to also dry it to make sure that we can speed up that part of our video. And you're going to also need something to put your paint in. And those should be all the supplies that you need for today. So let's get started. First, choose a paintbrush. I've got kind of a medium-sized brush. It can be medium size or larger, but you probably don't want a really small one because it will be a little bit slower and you might leave bigger pieces of paint behind. So we're going to go with this one. It's about 1/2 inch wide, and we're going to put some of our paint into our containers. So we'll start with some white. And we don't need a lot. You can see there's just a little bit on the bottom. And you know, if we do need more, we can always add more. And just a little bit of blue paint. And again, I'm not going to put very much, just a little bit in the bottom. I don't even need to cover the whole bottom. So I'm going to take my canvas and I'm going to start with a white. You won't see that very well at first, but we're going to blend our colors together. So we're going to put a line right across the top. And I'm not sure what kind of canvas you have at home. I have a really thin one here, but if you have sides, make sure you paint your sides as well. The reason you paint the sides of your canvas is because when you hang it on the wall, it's not distracting to see blank sides. So go about halfway down on your painting with the white, just like that. And make sure it's all covered all the way, the best that you can. And then we're going to add the blue part on. So just dip in a little bit of paint, and we're going to start from the bottom, put a little bit there, and because we didn't wash off our brush with the white paint, it'll be a little bit light, and as soon as you start getting close to where the white is, you can see that it starts blending in. And if you slowly move your brush down and then back up, it'll mix just a little bit more with every stroke. I've got to make sure I get to my corners here. kind of missed that because I'm holding my canvas as I am explaining to you, so that can be a little difficult to make sure I don't miss a spot. And you can see it doesn't look as smooth for me right here just now. And I can fix that. When you do a stroke, go all the way across your canvas, all the way across, and slowly move your way up a little bit more every time. And you can go really close to the top and get a very, very light blue if you want. Kind of looks a bit like clouds in the sky. And just kind of blend that together. And that's kind of what you get if you don't wash off your brush and you just let the two colors blend together. And at the bottom, since it's the darkest, I have a couple spots here that I've left white because my hands were under or on top of it. So you can touch up some of those, and you just do really long strokes to try to blend everything into each other well. And the key part is to make sure that this was still a little bit wet. If you take too long to blend your colors together, then you might have to add a little bit more white while you're blending your colors. So the next thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to dry this off. It's really important that your canvas is dry for the next part. So get out your blow dryer. Make sure your hands are dry, especially if this is one that is not just used for paint. You may want to make sure your family hair dryer is kept nice and clean. And so we're just going to take the hair dryer and dry it up. Make sure you move your hair dryer around, back and forth. And it dries really quickly. So for me, mine is pretty dry already. You can check on the edges. I did get a little line there, so it's not quite dry, but it's pretty close. We're gonna do something else just to give it a little extra time to dry too, because before we use our markers, we definitely need to make sure that this is nice and dry. So we're gonna set it aside and give it a little bit of time. The next part we're going to work on is our wave. So I want to give you a chance to trace it, and that's why we have a template. It took me a long time to make this nice shape, and it might take you a while too, so I thought I'd help you out and give you a wave shape. So first of all, you just need to cut it out right along the edges there. And this will give you a nice shape to work with. The shape of this wave is actually called a barrel wave. You see how it kind of curls in the middle? It's a bit like a big long barrel when the surfers go through the waves. So I'm not sure if some of you, hopefully you've got all the painting part done, and maybe you're just catching up quickly. So if you're able, feel free to pause the video. If not, I'll give you some options that maybe you can catch up. So we have our wave cut out here, and if you want to, you can take this wave and trace it right on here. But because it can be difficult to trace with paper, you can't hold your pen in place. That's why I've brought my recycled cardboard. Because it's thicker, I find it's easier to trace. So I'm going to add a second step here. So if you have the time, this will help you with your tracing. You can take one of your markers and trace it onto the cardboard. So you can't see what I'm doing. I'll put it up here so you can see. So just trace it. It might not be perfect, and that's okay. Mine's already not perfect, but we're trying to make this shape so that we can do a really good job when we trace it onto our canvas. So there's our shape. You can see it's a little bit squiggly in some parts, but that's okay right now. Next, grab your scissors again and cut out the shape. This one's really nice for my box because it was exactly the right length that I needed. Last time I did this, I used waffle boxes, and you can use cereal boxes, lots of different options for the types of materials you can use. And it's always great to recycle because you are protecting God's earth and being a good steward of the things God has given us when you reduce, reuse, and recycle. So there we go. We've got the same shape again, and if you have any edges in there that you don't like and you'd like to fix up, you can go back and fix them and make sure it's exactly the shape that you're looking for. Fix it a little bit there as well. So there we go. We've got our wave shape once again. So next you want to go back to your canvas. You do want to make sure it's dry. The edges are the parts that take the longest to dry. So you can go along the edge and see, is it dry? And I didn't get any new marks on my hands. I just have old marks from painting earlier. And I know that my canvas is dry right now. So I have some tape here. I am going to tape this up here so it's nice and high for all of us to see. You don't have to use tape or put it up high. You can use it flat on a table and that would be fine for you. So we're going to tape that just like this. That way I can work on it. I find it's difficult if you have a canvas when it's really low. You don't really have a spot for your hand to be, so that's why it's a little bit higher. Also, I'm going to move the camera and my canvas a little bit closer so that you can zoom right in and see exactly what's happening here. So now we have our canvas all ready to go. And all you have to do to start is take your wave shape and put it on your canvas. You'll notice that I put the white color at the top like the sky, and I'm imagining the blue like the water below. Also, if you do end up having a cardboard that is a little bit shorter than the edge, you can just extend your line, but mine is pretty close. So once you line that up, you're not going to need to trace the sides or the bottom. We only need to make the wave line around the top here. Be careful once you get to the tip. Don't go too far there. And there you are. And I'm just gonna fill in that line there. If you have any spots along, you want to touch it up, you can do that. And we have a nice sharp wave line there. So our next step for our wave line art is that we need to break up this space so we can put all our patterns inside. Now there are lots of ways that you can do that. I have a couple little tiny examples here. This one, I don't know if you can see that, is called the stripe pattern. And I think it kind of is like a candy cane in a way. And I have one here called a braid pattern. And that's the one we're going to do today. So to do the braid pattern, you just have to kind of cut off the tip right there to get started. And we're going to do a second one coming in to the edge of the wave here. After you've done your second line, we're going to go follow this line partway down, and we're going to curl around our wave like that. So we find a spot on the edge. Then we look at this last line we just drew, and we move down part of the way, and then we bring the line into the edge. We're going to go back and forth. So we take the last line we drew, move down a little bit from the top, and then go around to the edge. Again, the last line we drew, partway in, and then draw a line to the edge. Same again, look at the last line we drew, partway from the top of that line, and then do another curve all the way to the edge, partway down that line again, all the way to the edge, and then back again all the way to the edge. And I went a bit on my board there, that's okay. Hopefully you have some newsprint or something you're working on at home. So we go with our last line, partway down, all the way to the edge, all the way to the edge. Well, this one I got to the corner, so I didn't have to go all the way across. I went to the bottom this time. Break that up there, and I will just leave that part open. So the next part that we need to do is fill all this space with all kinds of patterns. Now, I wanted to show you a book that I have. It's called Restore My Soul. And this is a book by an author, Anne-Margaret Hovsepian, and she is actually a Christian artist that's in Montreal. And she was a really nice lady to meet, but she does this kind of artwork. And so I wanted to show you some of her artwork and give you an idea of some of the patterns that we're going to be able to use. So Anne-Margaret has zigzags that she uses, kind of like dragon scales, lines, looks like bricks, plaid patterns of rainbows. There's all kinds of different styles that you can do. And I'll bring that a little bit closer so that you can see. And those are some of the patterns that you can use. I've made a few here myself. And these are some ideas of patterns that I've used in the past, and they can be really simple. And you can have all kinds of excellent ideas of patterns that you can use. So you need to decide what patterns you're going to use. So we're going to start with an easy line pattern. So it doesn't matter which one you start with. Just pick one. And you can just do a bunch of stripes. They can go straight to the left and the right, up and down. There's lots of different ways. And this is just really, really simple pattern that you can do. So my first section is finished already. And I'll try to bring it just a little closer in case that's helpful for somebody. And then just think of any patterns you can think of. You can do polka dots, and your polka dots can all be circles. They can be big circles or small circles. Make sure you do some close to the edge, like the patterns going off the edge of your wave. just like that. And maybe you'd like to do some flowers. So you could color some in, do the centers first, just like that. And then I'm going to put my petals on my flowers. Just like that. And I think around here there might be some other petals or the edge of a flower. So I'm going to fill those in. So those are 3 different patterns. And like I said, you could do any patterns you want to. We're going to keep going with all kinds of different ideas. And if you would like to use the same patterns, you're welcome to. Or you can just get creative and use whatever patterns you would like to. For my next one, I'm going to do a zigzag. Might look a bit like triangles, back and forth. And when you do your patterns, you want to keep them all within your shape here. And I'm going to do other triangles inside my pattern. I make them smaller and smaller, but I'm going to fill in between with black so that we have alternating black and not black. So that means maybe I should fill in this triangle here. And again, a smaller triangle, and you can fill it in. And honestly, there's all kinds of different ideas. You saw from the one coloring book that I shared with you, and Margaret had all kinds of different ideas, and you can get books off of the shelf that will give you other ones. But I think we can all get really creative and think of many different patterns to use. So now I just have to go through and fill in all of those triangles. And I'll show you what we can do next with the, I showed you before, there's a thinner part on this marker, and you can use both ends of the marker to create patterns as well. So there we go, we have finished our triangle zigzag pattern. So for the next one, I said that we would try using the other end of our marker as well. So you can do a fat line and then a skinny line. A fat line and a skinny line. Now this looks, I think, quite a bit more like a candy cane with its different stripes. So back and forth, thick one and a thin one. I'll pull away just in case my hand was in front, but we just keep the pattern going. A thick one and then a thin one. And if you miss any spots, go ahead and touch them up to make sure they look the way you want them to. As long as we're using our marker, if you're not going to use one end, make sure you remember to put the cap on, because if you forget to do that, it could dry out, and we don't want that to happen. So, and I'm noticing here some of my colors didn't get all the way colored in, so I'm going to fix that one a little as well. So the next thing you want to do is just keep thinking of other designs. I kind of like this one. It's a bit of a flower design with 4 parts coming out of the edge, and then I put little circles on the end. Pick another spot for the ends to come out and do more little circles. and another spot here. One design someone came up with were ichthys fishes. Those are what you might call the Jesus fish. So I'm going to put some Jesus fishes on mine. Fishes do belong in the water too, so I think they're perfect for a wave. I am going to use spirals next. And make sure when you're using your pattern that they're not all right in the middle. You kind of stagger them and move them around in different spots on in your little space that you're working on. Next, I think we'll do some dragon scales. So to do dragon scales, you just need to make a bump and then find the middle of your bump and make your next scale to come out of it. You might think these look a bit like hills. Lots of ways you could look at it. Fish scales. I think they look a bit like fish scales too. But it's just a simple pattern of making little hills kind of offset from each other. I picked a really big square, or sorry, space for this one, so it takes a little bit longer. But hopefully you're getting creative at home in making all of your special patterns in all of your spaces. You might have a lot of spaces or a few spaces. It can take a bit of time, but take your time. Enjoy what you're doing as you fill in all of these spaces. Next, I think I'll do some zigzags. And I'm going to use the other end of my marker and do some little dots in between my zigzags. Next, I am going to try a fan pattern where I do 3 lines one direction, and then I'm going to do 3 lines the next direction, just on a bit of an angle there. And I'm going to go back the other direction, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and back this direction again, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And if you want to make it interesting, you can color in some of your lines again afterwards. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and back again, 1, 2, 3. Now I angled them just a little bit different this time because it's getting wider. I can get a little bit more interesting. And I have 2 sections left, so I will do some different size polka dots in this bottom one. And my last one, I'm going to have a rainbow pattern. All right, and as you go along, you can go back, touch up any of the pieces if you do need to, make them look the best that you would like them to. Just like that. Now I'm not sure, some of you might still be working on some of those, so I'll give you a little bit more time. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about this wave pattern that we're doing here. I'm not sure if you knew it, but there are actually a lot of places in the Bible that talk about water. Jesus even says that he is living water. And there are so many places in the Bible that talk about Jesus as water, the Holy Spirit as water, and that's because Jesus is like water. What do we use water for? I mean, we use water for drink. I had a couple drinks earlier in the video so that I could quench my thirst, but we use water to water plants, and water actually keeps us alive. It gives us life. And when Jesus says he is like water, he gives us new life. And so I think it's really neat to be reminded that Jesus is the living water for our lives. So I really like the imagery of Jesus as water. And so that's one of the reasons we're doing a water picture today. So one of the things we're going to do for our drawing is we're going to add a Bible verse. So in this one, I picked a verse from John chapter 7, and it says, "Come and drink if you're thirsty." So I moved it around the inside here, and then I finished it on the other side. And this one is from Revelation chapter 22, verse 17, and it says, "Come, let the one who is thirsty come." So we're going to choose a verse today, and I really like the Revelation one. I'm going to use the thinner part of my marker here to draw it. Now, you don't have to do it here if you want. Sometimes I've seen people do it along the edge in the waves, but pick a spot to write a verse and remind yourself about how Jesus is the living water. I'm going to start with the word let. Let the one who is, and I've run out of room here, so I'm going to continue over here, thirsty, come. And just so I remember where I found it in the Bible, I'm going to put my reference, so REV for Revelation 22:17. And if you want, you can keep going around the edge. You can redraw it if you want. I think I'm going to do that today. Let the one who is thirsty come. And for you at home, it might be a little bit easier. I think I'm actually going to take mine down so I can fix this up here with my exclamation mark. It's a little hard for me to draw that. You can move it around. But leave this space empty, because if you look up here, we're going to add in some other details. So hopefully you have your verse ready and added into your artwork. We're going to do this part of our wave now. This is called the froth. That would be the white little pieces that come off of the tips of the wave. So we're going to do some spirals. We're going to do some bigger ones first. So just like that. So come down off of the top and curl around. And another one just like that. And so we could fit about 3 bigger ones. You can make some longer, some shorter. There's lots of different ways you can add that in. And then I'm going to fit in some tinier curls in between. So that's just like making a big circle and putting tinier circles in, just like that. And you'll see in this one, I decided to put some droplets coming off. If you want to get creative, you could put a few droplets. Do whatever you would like to make your artwork creative and make it your own. The next part we're going to do are the waves in the background. So I'm going to use the thicker end of my marker, just like this. I'm going to be careful not to go over my letters because I still want to remember the verse that I had on here later. Just put your little waves that are in the background in the water. I'm going to alternate and use my thinner part again. Just like that. And again, I'm careful not to cover my words so that I can remember the verse that we have thought about for our lesson today. The next part you can see that we need to do are the clouds. They can be a little bit trickier, but I'll show you how to do them. We're going to start with a smaller curl, and then we're going to work into a bigger curl. So you pick a spot. If you'd like, you can practice first. I'll actually do a practice one on here so that you can see. So we're going to pick a middle spot, and then we just go around, and then we're going to curl up. Make sure it's bigger than this circle, just like that. And now that's a really big cloud that I've made. I'm going to make it smaller, more like this. So start with the middle part, 1 loop, 2 loops, and then make a big loop and fill it in until you get to the center. After we've done our little loop and our big loop, we're going to fill in our cloud with a few other little curly parts of our cloud, just like that. And when you think you're ready and you've practiced enough, you can put it on this painting. Now I find 2 clouds is usually enough to fill the sky. I think I'm going to use the thinner part of my marker. So start in the middle, around, and a bigger part, just like that, and you fill it in. Also, I try to keep it like there's a bottom of the cloud. I make it kind of puffy at the top, and I try not to let my circles get too low past a line here. But clouds are all kinds of shapes, so if you have different shapes, that's okay for you as well. Add on a few more spirals. And there you are. Now go for your next cloud, a circle, just like that. And some more spirals. If you'd like to add more clouds, feel free to add a few more clouds. And I think that is finished. I'm happy with what I've made today. The only other thing you could add if you would like to would be your name somewhere. So I'll put my initials right here. You can also put your name on the back of your canvas when you're finished. And voila, there is your artwork for today. I hope you've enjoyed doing some artwork with me today. If you need more time, keep working on that after the video. And it was great to have fun with you today.